what I consider really productive days, from the morning meetings to the walkthroughs we do in the morning, to lifting weights, to the practices, to the night meetings. I see these guys locked in and trying to get better every opportunity they have. So that's really encouraging, and we're staying relatively healthy. Stephen Manfro, he tweaked his shoulder the other day, and his knee had surgically repaired, has been bothering him. So we're going to send him back to see Dr. McAllister tomorrow, and there's a pretty good chance that he'll have a small surgical procedure, a minor surgical procedure, where he might miss a couple weeks and then be back with us, but I don't know that for sure. Ish tweaked his ankle, and it's probably a day or two. It's really not serious. He was on the bike today, but we're staying healthy, and I think one of the reasons is that these guys understand how to practice hard, and they understand how to practice physical and compete with violence, and yet stay on their feet and take care of each other. And to me, that's always a sign of a mature team that has athleticism and understands what they're trying to accomplish together. So I'm encouraged by the first 4 days.
Would you say that that's a sign of the kids knowing what they're doing from day one? This is your fourth training camp. Have you noticed an improvement since then?
Yeah, absolutely. Just when I've been around good teams, one of the things that I've noticed is that they are able to practice hard, aggressive, physical, fast, and yet stay on their feet. And so I think that's understanding how to practice that way, and then I think it's a sign of athleticism and maturity. And so I saw it all through the spring, and I've seen it here, and that's what we want. When we go live, we'll go to the ground, and there's going to be guys on the ground because there's 22 bodies flying around, but I've been really impressed with that because they are going after it. I mean, these are physical practices, and they are competing with a degree of violence that I like, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch them mature the way that they are and the way that they have.
Steve Manfro's minor procedure, that's on his knee, right? Not his shoulder?
That is on his knee.
Okay.
It's a meniscus, and so oftentimes when you're coming off of an injury like that, you might get a little flap of meniscus, so they just go in and they shave it off. It's relatively minor. I mean, I've been around guys that have had that procedure and played 7 days later, so I don't know that he'll come back that quickly, but it's nothing that will keep him out a long amount of time.
It seemed like Josh Rosen had a lot of run with the ones today.
Yeah, we said through the first 5 practices we were going to kind of rotate who got what, and his day-to-day with most of the team stuff was with the ones. But
I think he did.
I think he makes plays. He improves every day. There's a lot to improve on still. He's like everybody else. You have some good plays and then some plays that are challenging. But I think he's pushing to get better, and he has a good grasp of the game. And I've been impressed with a number of our freshmen. You guys asked me after this first day. I can start to bring up some names now because there are some guys that are starting to stand out to me. I'll start on offense. Bolu. I think that kid's got a chance to be a really special back. I don't think he's the kind of guy that you want to tackle. I think Soso's got incredible body control. He's smooth. He needs to learn to play with his pads down. I look at Steven Johnson. He gives us something that we desperately need, which is some elusive running ability in the slot. He catches the ball well. Austin Roberts is a guy who hasn't played at all here. He's very impressive to me. You move up front and you look at Freddie Perry, and he can be a dominant player. Tavita can be a dominant player. Andre James can be a dominant player. And those guys are really going to be something fun to watch. And then defensively, Keyshawn is not physically as developed as he'll get, but he's got a burst, suddenness. Josh Woods does some things. Nathan Metters does some things. Octavia Spencer flashes. So overall, I've been happy with the way the freshmen look.
Would you say they're better than advertised?
I wouldn't say that. I've just been impressed with the way they look. I see them in a game before we go that direction.
Going through a transition quarterback, what's the most difficult thing or the most concerning thing?
I would say just the unknown. It's not unlike 3 years ago for me, and 4 years ago, whatever, Brett took over. Just not knowing what it's going to look like, not knowing exactly how he's going to react to certain situations. situations because you don't have any to base that on. So that's the hardest thing for me. And then making a decision at some point, because you have to make a decision at some point, and hoping it's the right decision. Seemed like the last decision was the right decision. Let's hope this one's, equally productive.
How good is this offensive line 4 days in camp compared to the last 4?
It's not, there's no comparison. I mean, there's just, I don't want to overstate it because I just don't. I want them to prove it on Saturday afternoons, but it's an impressive looking group. You just talk about from left to right with Connor, and Kenny, and obviously Jake, and then the way Alex is playing, and then Caleb on the outside. I mean, it's a solid, good-looking, big, physical group that finally has played enough together where there's some synergy. I think one indicator for me of how the offensive line is playing is that Jake Brendel has not lost it yet. And so that's a good thing to see. It means they're communicating well, they're listening to him, they're adjusting the right way. So I like that group a lot, and I think we've got some quality depth. I think that there's a lot of young men that can step in and play if they have to. Hopefully they don't have to.
Guy you haven't seen a lot because of injuries, Cam Griffin. How's he?
Cam, good. It's Cam hasn't played a whole lot of football. He's a great rugby player. What you do see is you see tremendous athleticism out of him, and run, and he's got burst, and he's athletic. But he's still, it was a little bit behind in just terms of football instincts that you're looking for, especially at that position. But I think that, one thing we'll try to do with him is work him in as much as possible on special teams where he can use his size and his speed and his athleticism to help us.
Is there a projected time schedule for Kenny Ojioki to go full out?
He's going. He's rolling. He hasn't.
He's missing some team, it looks like, sometimes.
Just when he's subbed out for. He's not even on the injury report anymore. He's got that brace, which I think is a pain in the butt for him. You see him pulling it up a lot, but he has no limitations on him at this point, which is a real positive.
Jim, Kenny Clark has grown tremendously these last few years. How is he different or better from this year as compared to, say, years past?
He's more mature, he's bigger, he's stronger, he's more durable. He's always been a very good player since his freshman year. He stepped right in and he looked like a full-grown man. I think he just has a great grasp of what we're trying to do, and I think that probably the biggest thing is just his influence on those around him. He has great work ethic. He doesn't say a lot, but when he does, it's very meaningful, and the players around him react to it.
How much of the big numbers that Miles puts up and Oa puts up, how much of that is made possible by what Kenny does up front to begin?
Well, it's just the nose guard he's usually the unsung hero of any really good defense. You have to be strong in the middle, and when you see a guy like Eric Kendricks, and Eric could probably be the first guy to tell you this if you asked him. So often Kenny would hold a double team and they couldn't get up to the second level to get to Eric, so Eric could run and make plays. And any great middle linebacker wants to have, the kind of guy that Kenny is in front of him, that's for sure.
Looking at the way the tack's playing, does he look like a guy that's finally had a full offseason in the program now?
He does, especially the last 2 practices when we put the pads on. He's 245 pounds now. He still runs well. He's much better than anyone probably ever thought he would be against the run because he plays with leverage and he's got strong hands. And that speed as a pass rusher, has always been a real great attribute that he's had. So I think he's just going to keep getting better and better. He didn't have a camp with us last year. He never went through this stuff, so it's really helpful.
Made a little bit of a donation today.
Yeah.
What does that mean in terms of your commitment to UCLA?
Well, I've stated from day one, as you know, that I'm completely committed to this place. I've never indicated otherwise. Other people might speculate, but I never have. And Shannon and I just felt as a family it's important for us to I'm always asking people for stuff. I'm always asking the administration for things, and our donors, and our boosters, and our student athletes, and our student body. And we thought it was just important that we were really firm in showing our commitment to UCLA and what we're trying to build. So I would hope that it would put out any of those silly rumors that our opponents are using against us that I'm leaving. You know, I don't know what more I can do to prove that I'm not leaving. Okay, I didn't go to my alma mater. I didn't go to the Texas. Haven't taken an NFL job, and I just gave a little bit of cash to help build this building. So, if you're a recruit, I can't say this to you, but if you're I almost broke a rule there, Chris.
I was writing down.
I would just say, I mean, I don't know what else I can do, you know, to prove that this is where I want to be. And, you know, one thing that's always been important to me in thinking about my career is leaving some sort of legacy somehow. And I've never been able to stay here long enough to do that. And I'm hopeful that this can be the place that I do that.
Which terrace did you get?
The coaches, I don't know. Ask Josh. Josh knows, or Shannon. They just filled me in on it.
You guys are so giving. I've got a kitchen I'm trying to finish up. I could use a little some backsplash.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Thanks,